This might be one of the craziest NBA fallouts we've seen in years. We're talking about Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sochan, and what went down between these two during the finals had everybody talking. Imagine this for a second. The biggest game of the season, a championship hanging in the balance, and suddenly something happens that nobody saw coming. Jeremy Sochan walks up towards someone who used to be one of his closest friends, and Wemby brushes past with a shoulder and keeps moving like the guy isn't even there, like they never knew each other. Seriously, that clip spread everywhere in no time, and that's not even the most shocking part of this story. After the final buzzer, after everything had already been decided, Sochan reportedly went looking for some respect and reached out, only to get the same cold treatment again. People watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. This whole situation got icy fast, and trust me, there's a lot more to it than one awkward moment. Because this story runs way deeper than that, and some of the details caught fans completely off guard. These two weren't just teammates either. They looked like brothers. They celebrated wins together, laughed on the bench together, and always seemed locked in with each other. Then suddenly, all of that appeared to fall apart right in front of millions of viewers watching around the world. That's why people have been trying to figure out what really happened and why Victor Wembanyama seemed to act like his old friend wasn't even there. So let's go back to the beginning, because the full story makes everything even more interesting. What if I told you Jeremy Sochan was actually one of the very first people to welcome Victor Wembanyama to San Antonio before he had even been drafted? Before the cameras, before the press conferences, before all the excitement reached another level, San Antonio selected Sochan with the 9th overall pick in 2022. He came into the league after spending years around European basketball, growing up between Poland and Britain. The guy built a reputation as a hard worker and someone who always brought energy on the court. Then, 1 year later, the basketball world became obsessed with a 7'4" French sensation named Victor Wembanyama, a prospect many people compared to the biggest stars to ever enter the league. And here's the part that surprised a lot of fans. Before Wemby officially suited up for the Spurs, it was Sochan who reached out first. Wembanyama himself has shared that Sochan was the first person inside the organization who made him feel welcomed and accepted. That's pretty wild when you think about it. Two young players with European backgrounds connecting right away before the world even got to witness what Wembanyama could bring to the NBA. From there, their friendship seemed to take off. These two were constantly around each other. They celebrated victories together, supported one another after rough nights, and spent countless hours side by side. And let's keep it real, San Antonio wasn't stacking up wins during that stretch. There were tough losses and frustrating seasons, but Wemby and Sochan always looked close through it all. Fans loved seeing those moments. Wemby would crouch down to chat with Sochan because of the huge height difference, and Sochan would jump on his teammate after big plays. They were together during road trips, flights, practices, and team events so often that many people inside the organization viewed them as a pair. It wasn't just regular teammate chemistry either. Folks around the league saw what looked like a genuine friendship. Wembanyama has even spoken about how important it was to have someone who treated him like a regular person instead of just some basketball phenomenon. And for more than 2 seasons, that person appeared to be Jeremy Sochan. That's why everything that happened later left so many people stunned. There's some important context here too. During those years, San Antonio was in full rebuilding mode. Lottery picks, difficult nights, frustrating defeats, and plenty of growing pains. In the middle of all that chaos, these two built a strong connection. And relationships formed during hard times usually hit differently. Anybody can smile when a team is winning, but when things are rough, that's when real bonds often develop. That's why so many fans believe Wemby and Sochan had something special. Their friendship wasn't built inside a championship locker room where everybody is celebrating. It seemed to be built through adversity, disappointment, and the grind of trying to help turn a franchise around. That's what made everything that followed feel even more shocking. Then came February, and everything changed in a hurry. Out of nowhere, the Spurs decided to waive Jeremy Sochan. Just like that, the only NBA organization he had ever known moved in another direction. For a player who had spent years trying to establish himself and build relationships inside that locker room, it was a massive change. And things moved incredibly fast after that. Just 2 days later, Sochan signed with the New York Knicks. In the blink of an eye, the player who had built his NBA career in San Antonio and developed one of his closest friendships, there was suddenly wearing completely different colors on the other side of the country. Nobody could have guessed that this new chapter would eventually lead to one of the most talked about moments involving two former teammates. That's already wild by itself, but are we really surprised by what happened next? Because just 2 months after Jeremy Sochan posted a heartfelt thank you message to the Spurs after leaving, his new team and his former team somehow ended up meeting in the NBA Finals. The actual finals. What are the chances of that happening? And here's the interesting part. When Sochan shared that goodbye message, he didn't sound bitter at all. He wasn't acting like somebody angry about being let go. In fact, he said San Antonio had become the longest place he'd lived since his teenage years. When he was moving around Europe between basketball academies, that doesn't sound like someone holding a grudge. At least on the surface, it looked like a respectful split. Sochan seemed thankful for the opportunity and appreciative of the time he spent with the organization, which is exactly why what happened next left so many people scratching their heads. Because somewhere along the way, something appeared to change once that finals matchup became official. And then Sochan made comments that immediately got fans talking. Before the series even started, he sat down with reporters and shared his thoughts on how to deal with his former teammate. According to his comments, he said, "Being that tall, Wemby gets tired. Give him different looks, stay physical, make him run, and eventually he's gonna have to take plays off." People wasted no time reacting to those words, because to many fans, that sounded like more than ordinary basketball analysis. They saw it as insider knowledge coming from someone who had spent years alongside Wembanyama and knew his habits better than most players around the league. Suddenly, everybody had something to say about it. Some people argued that Sochan was simply trying to help his new team win, which is part of the job. Others thought those comments probably wouldn't sit well with Wembanyama, especially considering how close the two had once been. And that's what made the situation feel so complicated, because hearing those words from a former teammate is one thing, but hearing them from someone considered a close friend hits differently. What's even crazier is that nobody forced those comments out of him. This wasn't some old quote taken out of context or twisted around by social media. He said it openly and knew people would hear it. That alone had fans wondering where things stood between the two heading into the biggest series of the season. Whatever feelings existed by that point, it definitely didn't seem like either side was trying to avoid attention anymore. As the finals continued, the tension only grew stronger. Fans everywhere kept waiting to see whether emotions would boil over, and eventually, everybody got their answer. Game 5 arrived with San Antonio trailing 3-1 and fighting to keep its season alive. Wembanyama came out playing with incredible energy, making plays all over the floor and locking in defensively. Meanwhile, cameras repeatedly showed Sochan talking from the bench throughout the opening quarter, trying to get his attention and staying involved in the battle. At one point during the action, things got heated enough that Wembanyama appeared to respond with a quick tap to Sochan's chest, while the officials were focused elsewhere. It looked like a message that emotions were running high and that both players were fully invested in the moment. Most people assumed that would calm things down, but the tension didn't disappear. During the next timeout, both teams headed toward their benches, and Sochan approached Wembanyama again while continuing the exchange. That's when a moment happened that instantly became one of the biggest talking points of the entire finals. Instead of saying anything, Wembanyama kept moving toward the bench and appeared to make contact while passing by, showing almost no reaction afterward. No words, no dramatic gestures, no staring contest. He simply continued walking with the same expression on his face, like he was focused only on the game. And within minutes, the clip exploded all over social media. Millions of people were watching and debating the moment before the game had even ended. Broadcasters discussed it live, fans flooded comment sections, and everybody seemed to pick a side. One group defended Wembanyama, saying, "What does Sochan expect? You bump into a guy and trash talk him and you want to hug back." Another group sympathized with Sochan and argued, "Bro, he didn't even choose to leave San Antonio. Give the guy a little grace." No matter which side people supported, almost everybody agreed on one thing. That moment instantly became one of the defining images of the entire finals. And the reason it hit so hard wasn't because trash talk happened. Players go back and forth every single night in the NBA. That's nothing new. What made this feel different was the history involved. This wasn't some random opponent trying to get under Wemby's skin. This was somebody he had shared countless memories with. The same guy who traveled with him, celebrated wins with him, and stood beside him during difficult seasons. Seeing the interaction play out with so little emotion stunned a lot of people watching at home. That's what really had fans talking. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. People remembered all those old moments between the two and couldn't believe how different things look now. And the contrast became even more dramatic, because earlier in the series there had been a brief moment where Wembanyama gave Sochan a quick tap, almost like a small sign of respect between two people who once meant a lot to each other. But by Game 5, that energy seemed completely gone. Social media detectives quickly dug up older clips and placed them side by side with the new footage. On one screen, fans saw hugs, smiles, and celebrations. On the other, they saw a tense exchange during the biggest stage in basketball. That comparison alone sent the internet into overdrive. And that's exactly why this story became much bigger than ordinary trash talk or a typical playoff rivalry. To fans, this wasn't just another NBA feud. It felt like the collapse of a friendship that many people thought would last for years. And that emotional twist is what made the entire situation so unforgettable. What made this whole situation hit so hard was that fans felt like they were watching a real friendship fall apart right in front of everyone on the biggest stage basketball has to offer. But believe it or not, the drama didn't end there. In fact, things only got crazier from that point forward. Even though Jeremy Sochan had seen limited action throughout most of the series and hadn't played many important playoff minutes, Knicks head coach Mike Brown made a surprising decision late in Game 5 that caught a lot of people off guard. With the championship hanging in the balance and the clock winding down, Brown put Sochan directly on Victor Wembanyama. Think about how wild that sounds. The coach trusted the player who probably knew Wemby's habits better than almost anybody else in the league to defend him during one of the biggest moments imaginable. The player who had spent most of the series in a reduced role suddenly found himself face-to-face with someone he had shared 2.5 seasons with. For basketball fans, that added another layer of drama to an already unbelievable finals matchup. And honestly, it wasn't hard to understand the logic behind the move. Sochan had spent years practicing with Wembanyama, learning his favorite spots, understanding his footwork, and seeing his routines up close. Those details can become valuable in a high-pressure series, and Mike Brown clearly believed that knowledge could make a difference when everything was on the line. Meanwhile, Wembanyama came out strong and looked incredible early in the game. He protected the rim, piled up blocks, and played some outstanding defense while helping San Antonio grab an early advantage. For a while, it looked like the Spurs might actually extend the series and force a Game 6, but New York kept fighting. The Knicks adjusted in the second half, and San Antonio struggled to keep its offense flowing. As the pressure increased, the game became another nail-biter, just like the rest of the series. Then Jalen Brunson delivered one of the biggest performances of his career. He exploded for 45 points and led New York to a hard-fought 94-90 victory on the road in San Antonio. With that win, the Knicks captured the NBA championship and ended a title drought that stretched all the way back to 1973. More than 5 decades of waiting had finally come to an end. Fans inside the arena and all across New York celebrated a moment generations had dreamed about. And because he was part of the roster, Jeremy Sochan would also receive a championship ring under league rules, despite playing a smaller role during the postseason. And this wasn't just any final series either. Every single game came down to the final possession. Every game. That's incredibly rare, especially with so much at stake. The level of drama kept fans glued to their screens from start to finish. The ratings reflected that excitement too. Reports showed the finals averaged more than 20 million viewers, making it one of the league's most watched postseasons in decades. Basketball fans everywhere were locked in, and the spotlight on this matchup was enormous, which made the tension between Wembanyama and Sochan feel even bigger. None of this happened during some random regular season game that people would forget about a week later. These moments played out in front of one of the largest audiences the NBA had seen in years. Every interaction was being replayed, analyzed, and discussed by millions. But believe it or not, the story still wasn't finished, because what happened after the final buzzer became one of the most talked about moments of all. As soon as the game ended, emotions spilled everywhere. Knicks players celebrated, hugged each other, and soaked in the joy of finally bringing a championship back to New York after more than 50 years. It was a scene fans had waited generations to witness. On the other side, disappointment hit hard for San Antonio. Wembanyama finished with 19 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 blocks in the loss. After the game, cameras showed him heading toward the tunnel as emotions ran high following the heartbreaking defeat. Many players processed tough losses differently, and frustration was clearly visible throughout the arena. Reports and fan reactions quickly focused on the post-game scene, with some observers noting that several Spurs players appeared eager to leave the floor following the loss. Discussions immediately exploded online, with some fans arguing that sportsmanship should always come first, while others pointed out how painful losing a championship can be after such a close series. People had opinions from every angle. Some were saying, no matter how bad the loss hurts, you gotta show some respect at the end. Others defended the players, pointing out that emotions after a crushing defeat can be difficult to control. But here's the detail that really grabbed everyone's attention. While emotions were running high, cameras appeared to show Jeremy Sochan approaching several familiar faces from his former team, extending his hand and attempting to acknowledge them after the series. Yet the interaction seemed brief, and fans online immediately began debating whether there was lingering tension or whether emotions from the loss simply made the moment awkward. What made people talk even more was how similar that scene looked to what had happened earlier between Sochan and Wembanyama during the game. The comparison spread across social media almost instantly, and suddenly, fans everywhere were asking the same question. Was this simply the pain of losing talking, or had one of the NBA's closest friendships really fallen apart for good? I'm not even kidding. That footage blew up all over again the very next day when another camera angle surfaced, and whoever edited that video definitely knew how to grab attention. They lined up old clips of Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sochan hugging and celebrating during their Spurs days right next to the newer footage, showing Sochan being passed by without much acknowledgement. Fans everywhere were stunned by the contrast. Seriously, that hit people differently. Just think about the emotions involved for a second. Sochan had just become an NBA champion and was guaranteed a ring as part of the roster. But instead of immediately getting caught up in the celebrations, cameras appeared to show him trying to reconnect with some of the players he once considered family and showing respect after an intense series. Seeing those interactions unfold the way they did struck a nerve with a lot of fans. At that point, many people felt it went beyond basketball. It became something more personal, and that's one reason the clip spread so quickly online. The reactions underneath those videos were absolutely wild. Fans were digging through old NBA moments, trying to find similar situations and comparing it to famous playoff rivalries from the past. One fan even argued that Sochan seemed to be hoping for the kind of mutual respect Draymond Green and LeBron James showed each other after battling in the playoffs. That comment quickly gained attention, with some viewers criticizing the Spurs for not giving their former teammate that same kind of acknowledgement. But plenty of people pushed back too. Some fans were saying, you can't bump a guy and run your mouth at him for an entire series and then expect a warm handshake 5 minutes later. And honestly, that argument had supporters as well. That's what made the discussion so heated. Nobody seemed to agree, and the comment sections quickly turned into full-blown debates. People were defending both sides, and the arguments just kept growing. To be fair, reports and footage suggested that not every Spurs player rushed off immediately. Some players stayed behind and exchanged words with members of the Knicks before heading to the locker room. But social media focused heavily on one image above all else. That image of Sochan extending his hand and appearing to receive little response became the picture everyone talked about. It spread everywhere, and fans couldn't stop discussing it. Soon, people connected to the basketball world started weighing in too. Several voices around the league expressed disappointment and argued that sportsmanship should matter, even after painful defeats. Others believed emotions after losing a championship can make those moments difficult and deserved some understanding. One comparison kept popping up repeatedly. Jalen Brunson had just delivered a legendary performance and earned Finals MVP honors. Yet despite all the excitement and emotions surrounding the biggest night of his career, he still took time to acknowledge members of the opposing team and share moments of respect. That contrast became a major talking point among fans and analysts. And that's when the conversation really reached another level. Because suddenly, it wasn't just regular fans discussing the incident anymore. Current and former players, commentators, and basketball personalities all started sharing opinions. When respected voices around the sport begin talking publicly, that's when stories tend to take on a life of their own. Many people express the belief that intense competition and heartbreak are understandable, but that showing respect after such a close series remains important. And considering that every single game in the finals came down to the closing moments, emotions had been building throughout the matchups. That's part of what made the aftermath so emotional for everyone involved. As more people weighed in, it became obvious this wasn't going to disappear after one day. The discussion followed San Antonio into the offseason and kept growing louder. Fans everywhere continued debating whether emotions simply boiled over, or if something deeper was happening behind the scenes. And here's another reason why some observers thought the story gained so much momentum. Earlier during the postseason, Wembanyama had already drawn attention after deciding not to speak with the media following a difficult loss in another round. There had also been discussions surrounding his physical style of play and the accumulation of flagrant foul points during the playoffs. So when this latest controversy surfaced, some fans felt like it fit into a narrative they had already been following. That's why the reaction became so intense. For people who had been paying close attention throughout the playoffs, this didn't feel like an isolated incident. Instead, many believed they were seeing another chapter in a story that had been developing for weeks. Only now it was unfolding on the biggest stage possible. But despite all the rumors and all the theories flying around, one thing remained true. Neither Victor Wembanyama nor Jeremy Sochan had fully explained what happened between them. After the finals, Wembanyama spoke with reporters about the loss itself and the lessons that could come from falling short on basketball's biggest stage. But he didn't directly address the discussions surrounding the post-game interactions. And Sochan mostly let his actions do the talking. Despite everything that had happened during the series, despite the heated moments, and despite all the attention surrounding the controversy, cameras still appeared to show him extending his hand and attempting to acknowledge his former teammates, which only made fans even more curious about what really happened between two players who once looked inseparable. And honestly, that says a lot all by itself, even without Jeremy Sochan putting everything into words. So where does this leave two players who once looked completely inseparable? That's the big question everybody is asking right now. Maybe this is one of those situations that cools off once the emotions from losing a championship start to fade. It wouldn't be shocking if a few months from now we see these two laughing together during All-Star Weekend like nothing ever happened. Athletes have surprised fans before, and sometimes they move past things way quicker than people expect. But there's another possibility too, and it's honestly a tough one to think about. Maybe this really was the moment their friendship changed forever. A roster move neither player controlled, comments that sparked controversy, tense moments during the finals, and a post-game scene that the entire basketball world is still talking about. It's wild how quickly things can change, and I really want to hear what you think about all of this, because this is one of those stories where there isn't an easy answer. Was Wembanyama wrong for appearing to shut out someone he once considered a close friend after everything they went through together? Or did Sochan cross a line when he shared details about a player who trusted him for years? Depending on how you view the situation, you could argue either side. Some fans believe one player deserves the blame, while others think neither guy should be viewed as the villain. And maybe that's the truth of it. Sometimes the NBA is just brutal like that. Sometimes business gets in the way of relationships, and what started as something genuine gets complicated once championships and careers are involved. Not every story needs a bad guy. Sometimes two people simply get caught up in circumstances bigger than themselves. But here's what we know for sure. For 2.5 seasons, Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sochan were viewed as two of the closest players inside that San Antonio locker room. They came from different backgrounds, built a strong connection, and helped each other through difficult seasons when the franchise was trying to rebuild. Those memories and moments were very real. Then the business side of basketball stepped in, just like it so often does. Suddenly, they were wearing different uniforms, sitting on opposite benches, and competing for the biggest prize in the sport. And somehow, what once looked like a brotherhood turned into one of the most talked about stories in basketball, with fans debating every comment, every interaction, the shoulder bump, and that unforgettable post-game moment. And that's everything surrounding the Victor Wembanyama and Jeremy Sochan situation as we know it right now. Now I want to hear from you. Whose side are you on in this whole situation? Do you think Wemby handled things the wrong way? Or do you believe Sochan's actions sparked all of this? Or maybe you think neither player deserves the blame? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this debate is definitely going to be heated. And if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with other basketball fans who need to see this story. Your support really helps the channel grow, and it means a lot. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.